Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. The trash man just went by. I had to wait to record this. Can you hear him? I don't think you can hear him. They're down the street now. We had a big snowstorm last week, and so trash pickup got delayed. So then there was all sorts of conversations on the neighborhood Facebook group about when would they come back to pick up and et cetera. And so then it turned out that they couldn't come back until the next regularly scheduled trash pickup. People were pissed. They were so mad. They were like, well, can we put out extra this week? And, do not mess with people's trash pickup schedules. And the funniest part is we're having a big windstorm right now. So as I'm recording, I am watching people's trash blow down the street. So essentially, we're all going to have to go out there later and pick it up. And it will not be picked up by the garbage man until next week. Oh, the humanity. Speaking of humans, we are continuing to move through our topics of beliefs, this week making a notable expansion into the topic of distance, unrelatedly, ease. I did want to mention that on the website, we make a blog post for every podcast episode and the comments are open there. So if you have a question or if you just want to share with us how you're resonating with the material and what it means to you, we would love to hear from you. Or I guess they already know what you're going to say, but I don't. So I would love to hear from you. In the first part of the episode, you'll hear directly from the chorus themselves, and afterwards we will discuss. See you in a minute. We are so pleased to be here with you all. Distance, as you know it, is slightly different than the way that we know it. We understand now that distance to you is a gap, a span between places that you must exert energy in some form or fashion to cross. From our vantage point, distance is a slightly different concept in the sense that we do not necessarily see a chasm or a span to cross, but rather we see all things energetically as frequencies that we may vibrate towards at the moment of our choosing. And so where you would like to get to a place and must move through all the spaces in between, we are simply able to vibrate to that place. It is interesting to us, the human concept of distance, for it has given us the opportunity to understand energy and frequencies and different places, as you call them, in new ways. The journey that a human takes between point A and point B has changed over the years. It was not very long ago that getting between those two places took you a great amount of time indeed, and that often difficulties were so present on those journeys that you often had to turn back. Comparatively, today's human is able to cross vast distances while sitting in the comfort of a chair that moves quite quickly via bullet trains or jet planes to that next destination. In a sense, the traversing of different frequencies is becoming easier for you all. We have spoken about ease several times so far, and we would like to touch on that topic again. For ease, as a word, as a meaning, pertains more to your existences than to ours. For where we are, all things are effortless, are easy, because we do not have a concept of efforting the way that a human does. A great deal of your existences in your environment are spent thinking about efforting or efforting itself. You are great planners of things. You plot out how you must effort, and then you effort. You effort in all aspects of your existences. In fact, you believe that were you to desist in your efforting, your presence in the game might be ceased. That is, if you do not effort to feed yourselves daily, if you do not effort to protect yourselves daily from the weather, from malicious actions, etc., that those risks may negatively affect you in some way. The idea of ease and effortlessness is relatively recent to your kind. Heretofore, you had been so enmeshed in the experience of the beliefs of limitation that it had never quite occurred to your kind that there was an alternate path of ease, of less, of doing less, of working less hard, and of allowing the universe or luck or deities or any of the other things that humans have learned to place their trust in would bring to you the right circumstances, the right timing, or the right solutions to your problems. These beliefs that forces outside of you and even outside of your five senses environment can help you, can bring about things in your life without your needing to effort them into existence, is a powerful manifestation of your awakening. Each and every time that you were drawn to choosing a slightly easier path, what you are choosing is flow. Though where we are, flow is quite a different experience, we might say. It is many magnitudes stronger. It is many magnitudes more powerful, you might say. Still, the human experience of being present in the game, enmeshed in the belief systems, and able to sense a slightly easier path is a powerful example of your own abilities to perceive your paths of greatest expansion and flow, even from within the depths of the game and the belief systems of limitation that you created here. Can you imagine, beloved ones, how much easier things are getting and will continue to get? That there will be many chairs that you can sit in while things manifest before you, not just journeys between distances that you would like to travel. As you go forward and awaken to many of these emotions and many of these feelings that you have day to day, allow this concept of ease to return to you. There will be times that you will feel emotions that you consider to be negative, and there will be a part of you that wants to address that, stop that, analyze that, and work to release it. From our vantage point, your ability to release is quite natural and assured. In fact, there is nothing you need to do to release your participation in these limited beliefs and belief systems. It is already unfolding. You are awakening to this path in the midst of the unfolding. And this steady progression is one of the most amazing characteristics of the human experience. That to us, what would happen in an instant, to you unfolds over a period of time in which you are able to consciously experience various aspects in detail of this unfolding. Thus, beloved ones, surround yourselves with the idea of ease, of knowing throughout your entire being that all things can truly be effortless. Allow the time to pass. Allow the answers to appear. That is all that is required. And in that allowing, you step into your flow, where you are loved infinitely. One of the things that they and I have not yet directly addressed is the differences between the members of the chorus. In all the podcast episodes so far, they've sort of just spoken in unison, or we've sort of allowed for that. In actuality, the members of the chorus are really quite distinct. They are at varying levels of expansion. They have varying perspectives on us. They have varying experiences of energy. The reason I can call them the chorus in sort of a unified fashion is because we all share a common frequency when we connect, and that is the frequency of love or allowance, as we have spoken about in the episodes prior. We have been writing a book together recently, and we've been going over sort of the more basic definitions of terms. And one of the ones that they gave me recently was a definition for frequency. I think this is a term that we can throw around relatively casually, especially in sort of new age and spiritual circles. This idea that there's energy and there's frequencies and different things happen on different frequencies. And so I asked them, what would be your definition of frequency? And they said, places of understanding. I thought that was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I had to let that sink in for a while. It made so much sense that if I'm over here on my frequency and you're over there on your frequency, and I may not be able to relate to you, that is true because I am not at your place of understanding. I am not on that energy with you. And so, though we all share with the chorus sort of that larger frequency of love, there are also aspects of them that are slightly different. There are a variety of frequencies that they span. In the beginning, when I started channeling the chorus, the first members, I guess you could say, that I met are who I began to call the guides. These were the most expanded, the most loving, the most amazing voices. They are the furthest outside of our belief systems here. So the guides are not really subject to our beliefs of limitation. We've spoken a couple times about beliefs in episodes 4 and 5, beliefs about lack of trust, beliefs about lack of control, which really drive a lot of our experience here. And this week, they expanded outward on that topic to a broader belief system, a broader, what they call engine of reality, which is distance. Now, though we experience distance here, we do experience it in combination with the rest of our beliefs. So, distance in and of itself isn't hard to cross. But because we have so many beliefs about limitation and efforting and loss of control and inability to trust, those things manifest as making it difficult for us to move around. As you can imagine, across the great variety of frequencies and places of understanding, there are other ways to look at distance. And some of the members of the chorus do experience the idea of distance, but they experience it in a very different way. When I first started connecting to the guides, the first members of the chorus that I met, we had many interesting conversations, and slowly, gradually, I started to understand more about my mind, my existence here, my consciousness, etc. And really not too far into the conversations, they said, we'd like to introduce you to someone else. Which was a pretty weird experience because I'm already sort of not totally believing these voices in my head that they exist. And so the voices in my head said, we would like to introduce you to different voices. As usual, there was a part of me that was like, oh, hell no. I don't know what this is. I am going crazy. I am most certainly going crazy. There's a part of me that was afraid. And then there was another part of me that felt like, wow, yeah, okay. I'd love to meet other beings, other perspectives. This sounds great. How do they view all of this? What do they think? And so as I opened to it, because the guides never foisted any other members of the chorus upon me, it was always my choice. And so as I opened up to that idea, they would sort of patch other members through in the beginning. Now I sort of have direct phone lines to all of them, but it was a gradual process. It was an energetic process. One of my expansion and resonance with those different frequencies or those different places of understanding. One of the voices that they patched through, I remember I was channeling while I was painting bookcases. Again, just to test it, just to see if I could do it, if I could do some sort of DIY crafting project while also receiving those energies. And I was having a great conversation with the guides, and they said, "We'd like to patch someone through." And I thought, well, we'll see how this goes. I've got buckets of paint around me and a paint roller. Sure, give it a try, patch somebody through. And I remember feeling an immediate difference. This next entity or group of entities, as you might call it, who came through felt so different than the guides. It was really obvious. It was as if a different friend had just walked into the room, as easy to recognize as it would be if any other human stepped into your view. And so at this point in time, I was still channeling out loud a lot. It helped me to keep my mind busy using squeaks and whistles. And so I started speaking their energy as it felt to me. And it sort of came out like, "Oh, we are so happy to be with you." I mean, it was sort of like if Marilyn Monroe inhaled some helium. It was just high pitched and like breathy. It was really breathy, like, "Oh, we're so happy to be here." And not only was I surprised by what came out of me, but also they were surprised. And they said, "Is that what you think we sound like on your frequencies?" I mean, they were almost a little offended, not offended, but just like sort of aghast. And I was sort of like, "Yeah." And you could just hear their collective like belly laugh, like just thought this was the funniest thing that they had ever experienced. That when their energies were translated by a human over on our frequencies, they came out sounding like that. So over time, as I kept getting introduced to more and more members of the chorus, I'll be honest, I started running out of different ways to make them sound. It was a most amazing experience of our own limitations. I hadn't really thought of human language as so limited until I started meeting this variety of beings that are far and away beyond our belief systems. And there were only so many ways I could express that here. And so gradually, after meeting so many different members, I shifted from being more focused on how I was manifesting it here and how it sounded and how it was portrayed to not even really paying much attention to that at all, and instead being more focused on the way that they felt. Because feeling was far more expansive and far more nuanced than anything that I could conjure on the five senses. I could feel within me their diversity and their variety and all the different flavors of their existences in ways that would be very difficult for me to put into words or would take me a very long time to put into words to create that level of difference, of variety. And so gradually over time, I stopped speaking what they were saying out loud. And I sort of just channeled within myself at the feeling level. It never really came down all the way to the five senses. One group of beings that I remember meeting in particular, and this was towards the end. And when I say the end, what I mean is The guides let me know early on in the process that I would be introduced to a variety of beings while I was still, quote unquote, mostly human. And what they mean by that is that my belief systems of our reality of here were still largely intact. So, though I had had a handful of conversations with the guides, we hadn't really gotten to a lot of these concepts yet. And so I was still mostly afraid, feeling like I was going crazy, didn't have a lot of logic or structure or support for what I was going through. And they said that this was by design and by agreement for a period of time, so that as I energetically connected to these other beings, they were able to more fully experience the human belief system because I, as the conduit, was still very much enmeshed or fully attached to what we all believe here. And so they weren't getting like a hybrid human who like kind of believes in time and distance and limitation, but kind of doesn't, they were getting a full human. I still believed in all of my own limitations. And there was this one loophole, there was this one exception where I could connect to these guides. And through that one little strand of energetic connection, all these other beings were able to connect to me and connect to us because we all share these beliefs. And so most of these connections or conversations, however you want to call them, went a little something like this. The guides would say, "Can we patch someone through?" And I would say, "Well, go for it." Can't make any promises. I don't know how all this works, but sure, if you guys want to. And then I would sense something very different come through. And in that initial moment of energetic connection, almost instantly, but it varied, I would sense their understanding. It was like viscerally observing someone else's own epiphany. Because they would come through and connect to me. And in that connection, they joined in my frequencies and they came to a place of understanding of all of us. And they would be gracious, appreciative, amazed, in awe, loving, just overwhelmed by how incredible the human experience and the human belief system is. And then it would sort of open up to questions, which was really funny because they, being energetic beings, as soon as they connected to our frequency, it was a complete download, a total and complete download. They had complete understanding of humankind. Then me, still being enmeshed in the human belief systems, did not get that download. Otherwise, my connection, my perfect connection to our collective beliefs would have been disrupted. And it was not the time or the place for that yet. And so they would say, "What questions do you have for us?" And I would think, it was sort of like, where do you start? What do you say? And as I've mentioned before, many of them don't exist in a five senses sort of way. So if I asked them, "Where are you?" They would kind of laugh, just delighted at this human concept. And they would say, "What's aware? What do I look like? What's a look like?" And so you sort of run out of questions to get to know them. And so instead, I would just sort of open up broader. And I would say, "What is this experience like for you?" I sort of just let them talk. And through experiencing them, their curiosity about us or their joy about us, which might all seem such like a similar thing each time, but remember within each words there's variety. So they were joyful over us in different ways. They were curious about us in different ways. And through experiencing those aspects of them, I did begin to understand their frequencies more. Related today to the concept of distance, however, was one of the most interesting experiences that I had in connecting to other beings in the beginning. I started to notice that as I connected to these different consciousnesses, that some of them seemed to share our beliefs more than others. The guides were very clearly like not at all affected by anything we're affected by here. They sort of just were lovingly looking at it all from a great distance that would be very difficult for me to put into words. However, as I met other members of the chorus, it started to become clear to me very gradually that some of these members definitely were more on the continuum with the guides, just didn't quite have our same restrictions of body and mind and things like that and trust. And then, just like a continuum, there were others that were actually a little closer to us. And one of those groups I remember most distinctly. It was towards the end, meaning it was towards the end of when my beliefs were still very much intact. And so it makes sense that these beings sort of connected to me last. Because in connecting to them, my understanding of my own existence was altered. Meaning, in connecting to someone who is resonant at a slightly different place of understanding, you can very naturally expand yourself to hold both places of understanding. It's kind of like, have you ever tried to explain something to someone and you start to explain it and then you realize, oh, they're missing all the information in between and you got to back up and sort of just take the next step from where they are? Okay, that's an energetic thing. What's happening energetically in that instance is that you are aware of your own expansion to the next frequency. Is it possible to come into contact with frequencies that are 10 steps down the road? Yes, it is. But it's a slightly different experience than a gradual expanding outward. And that's as much as I'll say for now, because we're still very much in our human mentality. And as they talked about in episode 7 about how humans learn, we like to break shit apart. And this is very close to things that we are currently energized on right now. And so we are very likely to rebuff or limit this understanding. And so we're just going to be really soft with this for right now. You get the sense of like, we need the next chapter in order to move our understanding forward. We can't just jump 3 textbooks ahead or we get a little lost. Okay, you know what that feeling is like? So when these beings patched through, I very quickly got a sense that they were not as far out as the guides, and they were very close to my next chapter. Does that make sense? So the interaction went something like this. The guide said, "We're going to patch someone through." And I said, "Yep, do it up." And then this feeling came through that was so close to the sensation of a human. It was a little more dense than the guides. It was a little more solid. It was a little heavier. It was a little more structured. The guides and the more free-flowing beings are very loose. They're very agile. They're very flexible. And this felt more structured, more enmeshed in beliefs. And so I could feel them grappling with something the way a human does when we're trying to understand something. And they were delighted to be connected the way they all are, but they were also very confused. And I had not felt confusion in any of the other beings except fellow humans. And it started to become clear to me that they were very confused about how they had not been able to find us. And when I say find, I mean literally, as in the concepts of place and distance. And so they had questions. It wasn't an automatic energetic transfer the way it had been with so many others. And they said, "Where are you?" And this was extraordinary to me because I had never been asked a human question, a human like question by another being that had been patched through. And I wasn't sure how to answer the question. I thought to myself, well, I don't know. I live at this street address in this town in this state. I mean, where are you? I'm here, planet Earth. Like it's kind of obvious, isn't it? And so we stuck with each other for many minutes of sort of just feeling each other's energy. And then I felt it. I felt their aha. I felt their epiphany. And I realized in that moment how many different ideas of distance and space there are. Because in that moment, they resonated with my place of understanding. And in that moment, I resonated with theirs. And so something that had always seemed so cut and dry to me, the concept of distance, you guys, of physical space, I suddenly realized why that might have been so confusing for them and how differently they saw it. And so there was this jubilation, this age old almost jubilation that they had not been able to literally find us because of our own beliefs of space and distance that we had constructed our place in the universe in such a nuanced and different way that others could not resonate with it. And so as I sort of stuck with them, just being me, just being present in our belief systems, and we very gradually inched our way towards each other, I felt them go, "Oh, that's it. That's it. That's humans. That's how you think of distance. That's quote unquote where you've been. That's why we haven't been able to see you or find you. That's why all this shit hasn't worked. We get it. We get it. We're here. We found you. We're connected." It was incredible. In astronomy, there is something called the Drake equation. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's a calculation that a man named Drake came up with to basically run through all the theories as to why humans have still not encountered intelligent life in the galaxies. And the equation basically runs through a lot of different if-then scenarios. Well, if this many stars and if this many could host life and if this many that, et cetera, what's the probability that there's life in the galaxies? And then it sort of runs down into two possible solutions as to why humanity as a collective has not experienced broadly the existence of intelligent life around us. And the two options it basically gets down to are either they are out there, but for some reason, they just don't want to let us know that they're there. Or also, we are actually alone. If you listened to last week's podcast, then you know the chorus's opinion on this is we are not alone and we have never been alone. And so the spotlight sort of moves back over to, well, then why don't we know that they're there as a group? Or why have they chosen not to show themselves to us as a group? And in that moment of understanding these entities' perspective on distance and how much they had wanted to find us and to understand us and to connect to us, but that our own beliefs kept us away from the perception of other beings, gave me a very different perspective on the Drake equation and our perceived loneliness in the universe. As the Course has mentioned over the many weeks, our belief systems were structured, were the result of our resonance with frequencies of disallowance, the perceived experience of a disallowance of energy. And humans and humankind and how we have done this is a great curiosity for so many. And us as humans, we might say, well, what's so special about what we've done here? And this is what the first example of many things that we will talk about here that humanity has accomplished. I mean, we are the prize fighters of limitation in ways that we're just awakening to. And so isn't it funny that we have all these conversations about our isolation in the universe, and we even have very intelligent people like Mr. Drake making an equation that says, well, they must just have chosen not to show themselves to us. And then I have an experience of connecting to other beings who very much are interested in connecting to us, but because of the limited way that we believe and that we create our reality, they had been unable to do so. And in fact, I would argue, based on my experience with the guides and being introduced to beings after beings after beings after beings who were so curious to see behind the scenes of human existence. How does it work back there? What's the man behind the curtain? We haven't been able to see any of this. That in actuality, it hasn't been about there's all these intelligent beings out there and they've just chosen not to reveal themselves to humans because humans are such a mess. Who wants to talk to them? Rather, it's the opposite. We have been a fascination for so many more than we can yet imagine. And it is through our choice of resonance here, it was through the narrowing of our consciousness to this existence that all those many have been unable to reach us energetically. And that all those many are having such a good time right now, observing us, reconnecting to us, understanding what it was that we created here, and coming to our place of understanding. Did you ever think it could be so easy? That you could meet another being and another group of beings while also painting your bookcases? I can assure you, I never had a thought ahead of time that that's what it would be like. Ease is a relatively new concept for humans, as the chorus said today. It's only in recent millennia that we have begun to have this question or this awareness of, why am I working so hard? The Course has indicated that for a very long time, while we were here, while we have been here, we've been so fully enmeshed in the game itself that we have not yet been able to pull up and look around and have that experience of perception until recently. And that is because we are awakening, which is expanding from this point of limitation. And as we do so, we keep one foothold in the limitation itself as we move outwards. And in so doing, we are able to turn around and look back and say, what is all this? Why did I believe that? Why did I do that? Why did I feel that? And in the asking of that question, really what you are doing is looking at it all from an expanded consciousness. And ease, the idea that things could be easy, is a perfect example of how humankind is already doing this. I don't know about you, but I am a list maker. I have lists for everything. Shopping lists, lists of to-dos, lists of things for the house, list of things I would like to get, list of clothes I would like to buy, just all over the place, lists everywhere. And sometimes I even write down something on my list just to cross it off because it feels good to cross it off. Sometimes when I'm feeling like the day didn't go as I thought it would or as I wanted it to go, I make a list of everything I did that day instead. And I like looking at that list. Humans are big planners, big listers, big thinkers of the things to do and then the doing of them. Although lately, as in recent centuries, you might notice that humans are getting more and more interested in the planning than in the actual doing. Energetically, what's that about? Today, in most business situations, in most business circumstances, you will find a heavy emphasis that humans place on planning. There are pieces of software that help teams plan. There are entire meetings, kickoffs, all-day seminars on planning, on how to factor in different contingencies, on how to allow for the unknown, on how to put backfill into your plan should you need it. People plan for their technology requirements. We plan for buildings that we are constructing. We plan for roads and cities and how they will grow. We plan for elections. We plan for marketing campaigns. There is a lot of planning going on in humankind right now, and also in my phone where I keep a lot of lists. So why are humans so enthralled at the moment with this idea of planning? And what about that relates to the concept that the Course introduced today of ease? Okay, but first I have a question for you. When I talk about flow, or when you envision the idea of flow and flowing energetically, in addition to the feelings that you think that might feel like, what comes to mind? What images come into your mind as you think about flow? If you are like most humans, it would not be uncommon for you to have some images in your mind that look like a line, something linear. So perhaps flow conjures to you sort of images of a river or images of a beam of light, something that relates to the sense of this, then this, then this, then this, right? Flowing through things. However, it would be far more uncommon for most humans to envision a very messy, squiggly line. as flow. I mean, all over the place, a bowl of spaghetti, just this way and that way, and folding back on itself and twisting and turning and moving this way and that way, right? Just a mess to a human, a messy, squiggly, all over the place line. Now, this is not to say that one is better than the other. This is not to say you have to replace your idea of a line with ideas of squiggles. Better is not what we do here. We do more, not more better. We do more and different ways of seeing energy and existence. So now this is another way you can envision flow. From the chorus's perspective, this is the difference between the constrained context that humans have created here and that we live in, and the more natural version of flow. We began to touch on this in episode number 4 about control, where we discussed how when we feel in control, energetically, what we are actually sensing is fit with our existing context and our existing belief system. And we like that sense of control in many ways because that's what we came here to experience, was this context. And so we work with things, we work with ideas, we work with newness until we ratchet it down into the existing context. And then we feel, we're in control. Now, by contrast to a human, free-flowing energy, new energy that comes into our context here can feel very much out of control because it is very much outside of our context. And so newness, new energy, and expansion can often look like chaos to a human because it doesn't fit. It's new. And so on the one side, when we envision flow, we envision a straight, clean, streamlined sort of energy that carries us through one thing to the next thing to the next thing. But then there's also this growing part of us that understands that things that we did not expect or plan to do can sometimes move us forward the fastest, the most efficiently, the most enjoyably. That we could be expanded in ways that we did not foresee by surprises in our life. And so when we think about ease, typically, a human will think about it in terms of kind of no surprises. Sort of everything I expected to happen just falls into place like dominoes, right? It was so easy. It just sort of all came together without any terribly big surprises. And the chorus is saying, yes, but also ease just means flowing from thing to thing to thing without any judgment as to whether or not you thought that was what needed to happen in advance, or whether or not you are judging it to be good, wanted, or useful in the current moment. So in that case, the squiggly line can have the same sensation as the straight one. Does that make sense? The straight line, that flowing energy of, man, I'm just flying, right? In that case, what has aligned is that sense of flow, also with your perception, your contextual allowance of the manifestations. It's not too disruptive, right? The squiggly line can feel the same way, even though to most humans today, it would seem more like a roller coaster. First, you're moving this way, then you're moving that way. Now you're going over here. Now you're going over there. Now you're having that conversation. Now you're going outside. Now you're not. Now you're, right? The context is changing. The environment is changing. The thing you're thinking about is changing. And yet, that is flow because it feels easy. It feels flowing. And the difference between these two things, really, between these two images and these two ideas, is basically just the presence of beliefs, of judgments. In the one case, all the judgments are sort of like, yeah, this is great. It feels like it's great. I know what's happening. I'm in total control. It's comfortable. It's amazing. And then in the second case, there might be judgments that say, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know why I want to go over here. I don't know why I'm having this conversation now. I'm not sure why I'm compelled to do this next. I don't know why I don't even care now if that happens or not. It's curvy. It's messy to a human. It's all over the place. It's illogical. It can seem irrational. But the feeling is the same. It is flowing and it's easy. And this is where humans are coming to now. We have started to recognize that things we did not foresee and did not plan on are helpful to us. We allow for surprises. We can almost anticipate that there are going to be things that come up in the course of a project that we cannot know in advance. So now when we look at what's happening with planning worldwide for all humans, maybe now you can see a little bit of both of these images present. Are there times when planning seems to move an entire team forward, where it feels very flowing, very constructive, and very helpful? Where you walk out of that planning meeting and you all seem energized and aligned and excited about what's coming? And then there are planning meetings where it sort of feels like drudgery. It's really hard to make the slog. The plan seems onerous and overblown and heavy and difficult, not additive, but almost destructive. This is the sense of a plan, of an effort that is outside of flow. And they mentioned this a couple weeks ago when they started to talk about, and we'll talk about this more, that in our limited existence here, there are really only so many manifestations for all the things that we feel. You've seen this before. You've seen someone who's having a cup of coffee who's very depressed, and you've seen someone who's having a cup of coffee who is savoring the morning. The action, the manifestation of having the cup of coffee is the same, but those two people are having two very different experiences of the cup of coffee. The same is true for planning. The same is true for a great many things that we experience here. Sometimes planning is in flow, and sometimes it's not. But as we are awakening, we are understanding that there is a larger picture to these projects, to these manifestations that we are undertaking. And in the effort of planning, we are trying to, in a very five senses manifested way, draw up from the game board. Does that make sense? It is a reflection of where humanity is right now. That we like to, quote unquote, see into the future, that we like to look across many of these projects at once and try to understand what it is that connects them, that we can learn from about them, that we can leverage into our future to make that go better. It is an expanded vantage point. You can imagine that if you contrasted us to humanity of many thousands of years ago, who had not already started to awaken, that there might be less of a desire to plan things because it requires sort of an overarching mentality. Instead, in that sort of belief-driven existence, it may have been more desirable at that time to simply move from action to action to action to action. So when we talk about ease, even though we have an expanded perspective and we are now in planning, as opposed to just nonstop digging or nonstop hunting or nonstop whatever it is, we've drawn up a little bit collectively. And we all have this idea of, wait, let's think about this first. Let's plan it. Let's talk about where we want to go. Let's let this grow more before we pin it down completely, right? That side of planning, very easy, very flowing, very constructive. And then at some point, you sort of reach an apex. And then it starts going from, wait, let's let this grow and evolve and become a little more before we get out our hammers and our nails, to sort of the opposite. No, let's really hammer this down now. Let's make it fit. Let's make sure it doesn't go awry. Let's put all the pieces in their place. Let's not let anything move ever again because it's in the plan. And you will hear the difference in your team members as you talk to them. Sometimes they will feel uplifted by the plan, empowered, and that is them in a state of ease, in a state of flowing, in a state of moving with their work. And then sometimes you will hear them in the drudgery, in the stress, in the fight. And that is them moving outside of flow, outside of the ease. In the last couple of weeks, we started to talk about human emotions, the first two being fear and anger. Fear and anger, anger and fear. Does it sound a little bit like humanity right now? People are afraid of a lot of things, have a lot to be afraid of, and people are pissed off about a lot of things. Anger and fear and anger. We got a lot of that going on right now. And if you listen to those two episodes, you'll understand why, because energetically, those emotions are showing us interesting aspects of our perception of the new energy that we are expanding out to meet and are perceiving, balancing out with, in friction with, connecting with, however you want to say it, the limiting aspects of our belief systems here. So it makes a lot of sense that a group of people who are expanding might be alternatingly angry and afraid, because those are our names for that new and weird and different sensation that we are awakening to having because we are expanding. Last week, when we talked about fear, the chorus pointed out that there are two ways that you can move through it. You can either push yourself through the fear, or you can love it. And that second step might seem a little bit vague to humans. Like, how do I love the fear? I mean, I get it. It kind of sounds like bullshit. But from their perspective, what they are saying is, well, it can be easy. And a human will want to do something about the fear. They will ask questions. Why am I afraid? They will try to avoid it, maybe even subconsciously avoid it. They will try and talk it out. They will try and soothe themselves. They will try and address what it is that is making them afraid. Humans are motivated to address things that we do not like, perhaps is a word for that. But in so doing, what we accomplish is an energization of that thing. So in all the ways that we quote unquote try to deal with fear or with anger, we energize it. And so they say this concept of ease is new to you because you're just now starting to come around to, hey, this could be easier than I thought. Maybe we cut 20% out of the plan. Maybe we don't do those things right away. Maybe we just make a prototype to start and see how it goes, right? These things are coming to the forefront in human awakening. And they are saying, and also, you are starting to realize the power of ease for the things that you feel within yourselves. And so they are suggesting when you feel something like fear, you have choices. You can address it, avoid it, thwart it, fight it, all of those things. You can get worried about it. Why am I afraid again? Or you don't have to do anything about that at all. It really can be that easy. So we're going to tie this into one more thing because I know we're getting to places where these concepts tie into everything else that we've already talked about. And it'll feel more natural over time. In the beginning, it may feel like a squiggly line, but it will start to feel more whole and more holistic. So when we talked about inspiration and desire, we talked about that as energized moments of your own flow. And so when you think about times that you have been angry or fearful or any of those other friction type moments, there was probably also a part of you in there somewhere so soft and so subtle that you may not yet have even noticed that said, I'm hungry. I'd really like to go get a sandwich. Something super, super natural and incontroversial and really easy. But we think, I don't have time for that right now. I can't go get a sandwich. I am curled up in my bed in the fetal position, terrified of something, depressed about something, sad about something, angry about something. I don't have time for a sandwich. And the chorus is saying, well, that's the difference right there between ease, which is flow, or the experience that you had here of limitation. And you say, no, I can't get out of bed. I don't know what to do about the way that I feel. And they go, okay, that's a powerful experience of limitation. And then they say, you don't have to do anything about that though. You don't have to do anything about the fear, about the anger, about those feelings. And if you sort of come into that neutral place, you start to notice that other part of you that would like a sandwich. And you say, oh, that does sound good. I think I'll just go make a sandwich. And the chorus would say, yep, that was easy. That's it. It's nothing more complicated than that. That there will always be a path of ease somewhere on the table of options. Sometimes it's energized. Sometimes it feels exciting to follow that. Sometimes it feels like a letting everything else go. And when you do, that option is sort of just hanging out, shining there right in front of you. And you'll say, but that doesn't solve this. How does going and getting a sandwich solve this? I'm really upset about this. I'm really angry about this. It doesn't in that moment. It's a hard right. It's a squiggly line. It's something that will feel illogical or irrational or disconnected from the things that you wish felt better. But then, as we discussed, when you walk into the kitchen and get a sandwich, a new idea will come to you because you're back in the path of flow and ease. to be honest, this concept is still coming down to earth for me. It's still sinking in and integrating. I relapsed over the past couple of weeks. A lot of my old illness symptoms came up again, inexplicably, as usual. And very terrifyingly, for any of you out there who have had debilitating illnesses and you think you're through it, and then it comes back. And so, as you might imagine, I felt a lot of anger and fear. So I was reflecting on a lot that the Course said one day as I was laying in bed, feeling guilty about all the things I wished I could be doing, the health I wished I had, all this stuff that I didn't know what to do about. And I was reflecting on a lot of my most terrifying experiences. And they happened most often when the distance between the depths of the limitation that I was coming from reached some most divine heights in my connection to the Course. And the span between those two things was long and drastic, and the friction felt awful. So I'm laying there in bed during this relapse, thinking to myself, okay, I could ring up the Course right now and say, all right, what the hell is happening to me from your vantage point? And I'd probably get an answer. But also, it's going to make me fearful because there's a friction there between those two things. And then I thought, what would be easier? And then there it was, that quiet little desire just hanging out there. And it was quite simply, I'd like to lay here in the quiet a little while longer. Which is like what every sick person doesn't want to allow themselves to think because you fear that you'll never get out of bed. But what if it was that easy? So I laid there. And then the most beautiful feeling of relaxation came over me. I released all sorts of tensions that I didn't even know I was feeling in all of that fear and in all of that anger. And it went from being stuck in my bed to feeling like I was on vacation. Just a collective sigh of relief. And so I timed it because that's the kind of person I am. And after 17 minutes, I felt like I wanted to get out of bed. I didn't have to force myself. I didn't have to muster energy. I didn't have to try and calm my own nerves. I didn't have to do anything. It passed. And I got up. I didn't know it could be that easy. It's a winding road, to be sure. And sometimes I don't know why I want the things that I want, but I do. And then somehow later, I realize how perfectly that path led me through all the things that I needed to get through. I'll say one more thing because I know we're going long this week. We're really on a tear. If you're still here, I hope you're enjoying it. Going back to those, the beings, the Marilyn Monroe beings that I was painting bookcases with. It was scary in the way that it sometimes was to meet a new being. There was a part of me that was sort of asking in the background, what's happening? What's happening? The whole time I was channeling them. And then there was the other part of me that was quite content and very interested in what they had to say. And so as I talked to them and finished painting the bookcases, we got to this point where I knew the conversation was ending. It always feels like that. You don't know why, but it's just sort of like, oh, okay, things are wrapping up here shortly. And so I thanked them and enjoyed the conversation. And then I stood up, and almost as a parting shot, I heard them say, "Oh, you think you're done?" It wasn't a snide remark. It wasn't anything like that. It was sort of like their realization anew of how we limit ourselves and how we give ourselves experiences of incomplete. And I thought, what's that you said? Because I looked around and I mean, it all seemed complete to me. So I walked around to the back of side of one of the bookcases that I had started on. And sure enough, I had missed one of the niches. And so I still had my paint stuff out. I just painted it. And I reflected on how, had they not said that, I would have cleaned up all my paint stuff, put it all away, let the darn things dry. And when I came back to have them installed, that's when I would have noticed it, that I missed one. And so I had a simultaneous moment of, holy shit, they're real. And also, I felt that was easy. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found these messages to be helpful. May they accelerate you on your path wherever you'd like it to go. For more information, check out our website at katieandthechorus.com. There you will find show quotes, episode transcripts, details on our book, The Book of Human Awakening, as well as our newsletter sign up. Visit katieandthechorus.com. Thanks again. See you next time.